At just 37 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traore stands as the world's youngest head of state and one of the most watched.
Moi, mon plus grand regret, c'est d'avoir passé une bonne partie de ma jeunesse à écouter des radios comme RFI, France 24. J'ai été dans des pays où ces radios étaient fermées. Mais on prenait des applications, on enregistre leur journal pour écouter. Mais à partir d'un moment, il y a un déclic. Et je commence à comprendre qu'ils conditionnent nos cerveaux pour accepter ce qu'ils veulent.
He's seen as a leader who is pulling all the stops in a bid to hold onto the reins.
He speaks or acts in a manner that ostracizes and politically, quote-unquote, exorcises the domination that has been there for long by imperialist powers, and particularly in this case, the French government.
Ibrahim Traoré is popular, especially among the youth in Africa, because he himself is a young man. And remember that 60% of the African population is made up of people under the age of 25, which means that the youth look up to Traoré as their own, as their representative, as a role model.
Despite his growing popularity, Captain Traoré remains a lightning rod for unrest, surviving repeated coup attempts as rivals challenge his grip on power.
Captain Traoré has suffered the misfortune of being a key target for possible elimination, especially by groupings that are associated with imperialist powers, which are chagrined by his ascendancy and occupation of power.
On the latest foiled attempt, Burkinabe Security Minister Mahamadou Sana said the country's intelligence services had intercepted communications on a major plot for an assault on the presidency on April 16th.
The issue of attempted coups to dethrone him, and even numerous cases of attempted assassinations against President Traoré themselves speak to sophisticated and heightened cases of insecurity and organization of groups within Burkina Faso itself that can easily be used or infiltrated.
Traoré's government alleged the latest plot was orchestrated from Abidjan, the capital of neighboring Côte d'Ivoire. The allegation follows the recent arrest and dismissal of several army officers in Burkina Faso just a week earlier. So far, Côte d'Ivoire has not issued any public response.
I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that Côte d'Ivoire itself, as a state, is involved in that coup, because we don't have evidence. After all, what we heard was from the spokesperson of the government of Burkina Faso. I think more evidence will have to be shared. But should that be the case, I think it will be necessary to follow, best practices in international relations, mediation to try to calm down the situation between the two states, and also perhaps consider any form of judicial cooperation should there be any evidence shared by the government of Burkina Faso concerning some plotters who will be in Côte d'Ivoire.
Protesters in Ouagadougou have since taken to the streets in support of their leader to deliver a resounding message to the world. Traoré is not alone.
Ceux qui n'ont pas construit le Burkina Faso et qui veulent le détruire, on est là pour leur dire non, qu'on n'est pas d'accord. Ils n'ont qu'à rester là où ils sont, ou détruire là où ils sont. Mais il ne faut pas qu'ils vont venir détruire le Burkina Faso. Nous, on est d'accord avec notre président. On est content de notre président. On est d'accord pour tout ce qu'il fait.
Back in January 2024, the authorities announced that they had thwarted another coup attempt by a network of military personnel, some retired, some active, and civilians who conspired to destabilize the institutions of Burkina Faso. It is said some of the people behind the plot were arrested. 3 months before that, in September 2023, Burkinabe security forces had foiled yet another coup attempt.
The different coup attempts that we hear about are also explained by lengthy transitions, because a transition which was triggered by a military coup will have to end at some point. The question is, how will Traore touch down and say, okay, this is the end of the transition, now how we go for elections? The longer the transition becomes, without consensus in the political class, it will only elicit other appetites from different people in the ranks who would see that actually he himself has not delivered. There are people are dying on the front line, and they will perhaps think that if they came to power, they will perhaps end this mess.
Traore's popularity has soared since his ascension to power in September 2022, after he took part in a military coup that ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba. Traore and his fellow officers accused Damiba of abandoning their initial mission to restore security and territorial integrity. Dissatisfaction over Damiba's inability to curb escalating violence that had plagued the nation for years paved the way for Traore's ascent to power. Upon assuming power, Traore pledged to prioritize the fight against terrorism and restore Burkina Faso's territorial integrity. More than 2 years into his reign, pundits are divided regarding his role.
I would perhaps not necessarily agree with those who say that he was able to curb the insurgency in the north. If anything, actually, the situation has worsened since he came to power. But one thing is clear: he has multiplied efforts to bring in groups that might perhaps support him in facing terrorist activities. The whole idea of Traore, it revolves around changing partnerships. You remember that before he came into power, the most important partner in terms of security was France. Now, when Traore came to power, he changed that partnership and went rather towards Russia. But in essence, the situation has not necessarily improved on the ground. There are so many other tools that need to be utilized in order to curb the movement of terrorism, including economic incentives, etc., etc.
I can say he has succeeded where the ousted leader, together with the support of the French government, had actually failed. Because the occupation of Burkina Faso, by the support of the military aid from French government, did not in itself secure the Burkinabe people and Burkina Faso itself from cases of insecurity. In fact, since Traore came into power, close to, I think, 1.5 million people have gone back to their homes where they had migrated from because of insecurity.
Besides his effort to tackle insecurity, Traore has taken control of key gold mines through nationalization, marking a bold move to reclaim Burkina Faso's natural wealth and assert economic independence from foreign interests. Burkina Faso holds vast gold reserves. It's Africa's fourth largest gold producer. For years, much of this gold has flowed through foreign corporations and into global markets dominated by Western financial systems. But Traore has disrupted that flow, and now Western-owned firms appear to be facing a tough time, with some accusing Traore of using Burkina Faso's gold nationalization as a tool to consolidate political power and sideline democratic processes.
All those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
We want institutions such as the African Union and even ECOWAS, as well as the United Nations, to demand for critical material evidence. They must not allow exploiting to interfere with the internal affairs of Burkina Faso and come up with a scheme to exterminate or decapitate Captain Traore merely because of imperialist interests and exploitation of natural resources in Burkina Faso.
Traore's ability to transform populist enthusiasm into long-lasting, inclusive change will determine whether his legacy is remembered as a brief uprising or as a turning point in Burkina Faso's history.